For many years, the tempo run has been considered as a linchpin around which a lot of top athletes' training is done. And tempo running is often ill-defined as well and misunderstood because of the different grasps of what tempo running really is. Tempo running is often associated with about 2.5 millimoles of lactate, but most people don't have access to lactate measurement, and so you have to base it on velocity or on heart rate. And the two paces that's most associated with are your marathon pace and your half marathon pace. Tempo running for shorter distances, like for 10K races, like doing a 3-mile run for a 6-mile race, that might be too much at too higher intensity, and then interval training is a better idea. Similarly, for a 5K runner, it takes quite a lot of time to recover from, say, a 2K or a 3K run or a 2-mile run if you're training for a 5-mile race, and you might be better off doing 400s or 800s or 1,000 meter repeats in that fashion a little bit faster. So the tempo run is associated more with a half marathon and the marathon. So if you were training for a marathon, a tempo run might be something like 9 miles or 8 miles at your marathon pace, and it's that shorter distance so that you are able to recover from that very quickly, the day after or even maybe 2 days after, and be able to get back to easy running immediately and to be able to get back to quality training within 1 or 2 days. And so if you are not able to do that, then there's two ways to go at that. Is do shorter tempo runs. So as a marathon runner, you might only do a 6-mile tempo run or a 5-mile tempo run, or to fractionalize your tempo runs, which is something I find very, very useful. So as a marathon runner, you might want to run a 15-mile tempo run, which would be ideal for your marathon distance, but it takes a lot of emotional, mental energy, and it takes a long time to recover from that. So you might be able to fractionalize that. You might do something like 4 or 5 by 5K or 3 by 5 mile. All right, makes it a little easier to wrap your head around with a short recovery in between, maybe 1.5 to 3 minutes in between each. You get the neuromuscular benefit of running at your race pace, and that makes the tempo run much more sensible. Also, be cautious with how many tempo runs you do. You don't want to do a tempo run of some great distance a week or two before your marathon. You just won't recover in time. So maybe 3 weeks before, 2.5 weeks before, you might do a fractionalized tempo run before a marathon or a half marathon. Another thing to consider is if you're an Ironman or a half Ironman athlete and you want to train neuromuscularly correctly, then you might go out and do some tempo runs at your off the bike pace, but you wouldn't have preloaded that with the bike. All right, so there's two ways to consider that. So a brick workout, preload that, and then go out for a 5-mile run or a 2 by 3 mile or even a 3 by or 4 by 2 mile run, something like that, at your proposed race intensity. But sometimes it's okay to just go out there fresh and run a tempo run at the pace that you need to run off the bike for, because a lot of this is neuromuscular and not necessarily about your central physiology. But remember that difference. The top Ironman athletes might run 2 hours 45 for the marathon, and they might be 2:20 marathon runners, and to go out and do a tempo run at 2:20 marathon pace is kind of risky because it's pretty hard on the legs to recover from that. And so what they might do is they go out and run a 2:40 or 2:45 marathon pace. And similarly, if you're aiming at a 4-hour run off the bike, but you might only be a 3 hours 30 or a 3 hours 20 marathon runner, you might be better suited to do slightly longer tempo runs or more chunks at that Ironman pace on the run, even though you haven't preloaded it with a bike. But with the tempo run, you might want to look at lactate, but consider it more in terms of the principle of specificity. You're trying to run for longer and longer periods of time and still be able to recover at exactly the pace that you're looking for on race day. So remember that will be strongly impacted by heat and humidity. All right, where you might not be able to run the exact pace, but you might be able to run the intensity, or if you are at altitude. One of the things that I do in my tempo runs at altitude is I have my athletes run slightly downhill. And the reason why I have them run downhill is so that they don't have the cardiovascular needs that they would need at sea level. All right, so in other words, at altitude it's hard to get sufficient oxygen to be able to maintain that kind of pace, but if they're running downhill, they have the advantage of gravity, but they get the neuromuscular benefits by running downhill. So try that next time with your tempo run. Absolutely essential type of workout. Think carefully about the pace that you're going to run it at and use it sparingly because it has got some considerable recovery requirements.